welcome back to If I Knew You Better. I'm Brendan Davis, your host, and once again today I have a special edition of the show, a carryover from the old Big Fish in the Middle Kingdom show that I like to call Fretful Laowai with my friend Kevin Geiger. Hi, Kevin.
Hey, Brendan. How you doing?
Doing pretty good, all things considered, but there's a lot going on these days. How are you doing?
It's funny you mentioned a lot going on. There is a lot going on. There's also a lot
Some of it's good.
Yeah, some of it's good. Some of it not so good. There's also a lot not going on.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about this morning because I woke up, quite honestly, pretty bummed out today.
Yeah. Why is that?
I had
Let's get right into it here.
Yeah, just jump in. I had and this for those listening, don't turn it off now. I'll keep this short.
No, it's gonna be. We'll make it as entertaining. We'll make our misery as entertaining as possible.
And this is germane to the topic today. I had a great weekend with the kids. Everything was fantastic. Jumping back into the week, lining up the projects that I have to work on between now and Friday, which I love doing. I'm a workaholic, as well as a restaholic, so I enjoy play and work. But I just felt really bummed, and I was like, why do I feel this way? I realize it's because the projects that I'm working on right now, we talk about spinning plates.
Right.
And I got so many plates spinning, so many balls in the air, whatever metaphor you want. But the spinning plates have stopped spinning. They haven't fallen off the stick.
Right.
They're like up there frozen in suspended animation, I guess, literally and figuratively, but
I was gonna say suspended animation in your case, because you do animation. That's the double entendre, as our French friends would say.
Exactly. But just for a variety of factors, many of them financial. We ironically seem to find ourselves, and I know you have some shared misery here, where in the midst of the so-called hot China film market, there's this film financing winter that's going on that many people are facing for a variety of reasons that we can get into. Yeah. And what it means for, let's say, the projects I'm working on is that the hot money is gone, right? The dumb money is gone. In some cases, that's one and the same. Yeah. And you're just left with tough money. And the hoops you have to jump through, the approvals, the revisions, the waiting is really, in some cases, seemingly endless. And right now, just kind of stuck in that rut of okay, are we in a period that we're going to get through? Or is this the end of something? Is it a pause, right? The plates have not hit the ground. They haven't come off the stick, but they're not spinning anymore.
Sure. So. And we'll get into all this in some detail as we go. But so basically facing that existential reality / crisis.
That any independent filmmaker, I think.
Pretty much, yeah. So dealing with that, and then, I as we say, film business is always hard. It's always especially hard in China, and it's especially hard right now. And so talking about some of the whys of that. So, I have my own, the way we kind of tend to do this. And if you're new to this particular show, it is basically kind of a freeform recurring check-in that's roughly once a month, depending on our schedules and if we're in the same place or not. Because we like to do this in person. We talked about doing this by Skype once or twice, and we're like, it's better to wait and sit.
Our noses are like 2 feet apart from each other.
Yeah, we're on either side of the mic that picks up on both sides, and so it's better to sit here and breathe the same currently polluted air actually outside. Anyway, so back to the topic. So, hot money gone, dumb money gone, only tough money left. Why, Kevin? Well, there's several reasons, and we've got a list of reasons here to refresh our aging memories, but they're pretty fresh. We don't have to really think that hard.
Yes, and I was talking to my wife this morning about this, who, of course, as people, if they've listened to the show before, Wen, works with me on most of the projects I'm involved with here. She's a filmmaker, producer, creative in her own right. And
extraordinary, but extraordinary to the end.
Thank you so much. It is true. And talking about how one of our friends, who's a concept artist, a Chinese concept artist, mentioned this term just this morning, China film finance winter. Yeah. And this is something that is part of the parlance now. And the 3 reasons that were brought up, one was the tax reform that China underwent in the past year or so, where taxes were raised significantly on the entertainment industry, everybody from actors to producers to directors. Right. And this had a chilling effect in many respects on projects that were being greenlit, projects that were in production where suddenly an actor didn't want to make less than a certain amount of money per year after taxes. And so they asked the producers to increase the number of episodes to justify the blah, blah, blah. Right. And that has a ripple effect that could be quite detrimental.
Right. It also sort of affected Well, getting rid of the dual invoice system where you're officially paid this, but unofficially here's what you're really paid, and somehow that money comes from somewhere. So kind of what we think of the Hong Bao economy,
Yes.
the red envelope full of money
Has
economy.
tightened up.
It's tightened up a lot, which is good overall because it's getting a little more in line with
Western practices.
with the smaller level of corruption that you find in Hollywood.
Exactly right.
The slightly smaller level of corruption.
They've dialed back the major league corruption
Right.
to the minor league
Right.
Hollywood form.
Sure. More like about 10% of graft as opposed to
Exactly.
40, 50.
So anybody cooking the books in Hollywood can now feel more comfortable with how they cook the books here in China because it's more in line.
Very nice. And so there was that, and then we also had there's the issue with some. The films, there was just the news the other day that the animation film you were so hot on,
Right.
that's now the number 2 biggest. It passed Wandering Earth. It's now the number 2
so
biggest
it's behind
ever.
Wolf Warrior, I think.
Behind Wolf Warrior 2. So there are these landmark successes, but that's a handful of projects versus the ones that are hitting the ground.
Exactly.
Basically.
And just like in Hollywood, people will look at the successes and say, oh, that's what our film's going to do.
Everything's great. Yay!
Yep. You don't see all of the dead bodies that are
Yeah.
strewn everywhere that big film is stepping over, in some cases caused to die.
Right.
Also, the films just never even make it to market to begin with, right? They're produced and finished, but they never get distribution. And China has its fair share of this. So there are many, many films people never hear of where people have invested money, time, effort, produced the film, and it just does nothing. So because of those failed projects, that has been a big chilling effect, of course, on many people.
There was this statistic that came up. We're recording this on the Monday. This will release this Friday evening China time, Friday morning U.S. And I just finished the second weekend of the 48-hour film school, which I did with my friends, and I talked about post and producing in general. And there were some stats that came up where, and I haven't verified these, but somebody was quoting one of the industry sources here that said, that there are approximately 900 films produced here per year, and then about 100 that actually get some kind of distribution.
Yep.
And those numbers, that proportionately, there are a lot more films released in the U.S., but it's up. There are thousands of films produced, and and then you count little smaller projects that could, but there's several thousand released, there are many thousands produced globally and only a few thousand that are released.
You'll never
and then only
know.
a few of those make money.
Exactly.
So
You'll
it's
never
really
know
tricky.
those films existed, but the people who lost their ass on those films, they know. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so consequently, the film industry, it's a lot like the films you see are like Starlight. You see that Starlight.
Right.
It's a time capsule.
That's a good metaphor.
Thank you. I don't think I invented it, but I like to think I did, but I probably didn't.
Well, you're dropping it at the right time, so I'll give you credit for that.
But the films you see now in the theaters are reflective of the decisions, the bravery, the resources, the balls that people had a few years ago, 2 years ago at least, maybe 3, 4 more, that wound up producing this thing that you're currently enjoying. And so people will see that though and think, oh, it's so hot right now. But this is the result of the decisions made previously.
Exactly.
And now you're dealing with the concerns people have now, especially fed by, as we talked about, the failures that cause people to say, all right, let's cool down a bit here and be a little more careful with, what we're doing and with the uncertainty that's going on in the world. The trade war, for example, in China and around the world has been a big cause of uncertainty for many people and had an impact on our industry directly.
Exactly. And, we obviously there are people who are dealing more with commodities and like physical sustenance in life and death and
corn and
there's that kind of trade in those issues and they're the god awful knock-on effects in terms of relationship damage that happen. And fortunately, people to people, I have so many great friends here, Chinese friends, and people I know Chinese in the U.S. And so person to person, there's not a problem, but the effects of this,
country to country
is the issue. And so there have been a couple of specific things. We talked to you and I were chatting beforehand. There's specifically like film industry retaliation.
Yep.
And I won't name the names. It's really easy to find, but there's several of the prominent, American actresses specifically who have worked a lot here. And they're sort of like the stars who got
getting the
canceled
call,
from
yeah.
projects, and or being cut out of projects that have already been shot, and things being reshot. Although I won't get into that for the air here,
Sure.
but there is
Keep your
indication.
visa.
One of those people I'm thinking of just actually signed a new big representation agreement here. Literally, I saw yesterday, and so that tells me that okay, well that's an encouraging sign. Like they're feeling
Right.
that
Some light at the end of the
they're feeling
tunnel,
that
at least in
this could turn, right?
Yeah.
But it has been. It's speaking. The winter for that came about 6 months ago. I
Yeah.
would say is
Yeah.
when I started seeing those things drop. But what are some other things you're hearing about and experiencing?
Currency exchange. So as you know, any of us who are dealing with, whether you're doing a co-pro directly or you're just trying to move money around to be able to pay for your production, if it's a wholly owned Chinese production or not. The anti-corruption campaign, of course, had an impact on just being able to move legitimate money around. Things got a lot tighter. We talked about that on the previous episode. But the one thing that came up recently is that, Trump was all proud, and I see you've got your impeachment now shirt on again.
Yeah, I've got my shirt that I don't wear this shirt in public. Carl King got this at something a couple of years ago for me. Actually, he was ahead of the curve on this, but it's a takeoff on the Apocalypse Now movie poster, except it says impeachment now, and it has a very curtsy-ing looking Trump's face.
Yeah.
And
you wear it for me, don't you?
I wear it in my home because, of course, sadly, I actually was telling you earlier, I'm afraid if I walk out with this, people who don't know the references might think I'm somehow supporting this jackass.
Oh, right, because they can't read the font.
Well, they don't understand the reference to the film, and that he's this evil looking. He just look like the evil boss to people, as opposed to
exactly.
So anyway, so the ironic T-shirt stays in the.
That would be a great MAGA design, though. Right?
It kind of would. They actually should look into
way.
licensing this, but we digress. On
I think
a visual, which is great radio, always.
Well, we're gonna have to take a photograph now and throw it up on Crazy in a good way.
Have to do that.
But anyway. Ripping this back around, there's Trump saying, "Oh, we've got much more headroom than mainland China in terms of like how many things we can place tariffs on because of the imbalance, right? They can only go 75 more, a million, whatever. We can do 375 more. Well, guess what? China's not just going to play in that territory.
Beside the fact that that's like a false equivalency.
Exactly.
And not a way to look at this. But
it doesn't have to be tariff for tariff. China goes ahead and says, all right, we have the currency to play with. So right now, the RMB to USD exchange rate, it's either terrible or great, depending on which side of the fence you're on.
If you have money in the US that you can pull out and spend in China.
It's great right now.
It's great.
Yeah.
Which I was enjoying and
it's like 7.1, 7.2
7.2. It had gotten up to like 7.18 for a hot minute.
If you have money in China, mainland China, and you want to pay something in the U.S., like me occasionally, then it's not so great. It's like, oh man, the conversion rate on that isn't quite as juicy as it was before. And there was a period of time, like when I left Disney in 2015 here, it was down close to 6.
I was going to say, when I first started,
almost 6.0 flat.
It was right at 6. I mean, the rule of thumb, the handy conversion rule of thumb was about 6 to 1 when I first started dealing with China just in 2013.
Yeah. When I first came here in 2007, it was 6.84. I have this number drilled in my head. And then it gradually down. Woo, this is good. And then up.
Yeah,
so, this has an effect on your ability to finance films, to rely on a currency being stable for exchange rates, etc. Of course, people will build into their contracts, a given rate.
Yeah, you have some latitude.
But even doing that, you're making certain assumptions in order to do that then can get blown clear out of the water. So the trade war has had a chilling effect. Suffice it to say, on people's adventurousness financially with things like supporting content creation.
Well, then this is why, and we talked about this previously too, but I mean, all of my development is offshore. I mean, we have the film we're both involved in that's set in Paris. I have 2 projects that are on a burner in New Zealand. I'm circling a thing in Canada, to join that. And then I've got like a US thing, and I'll talk about this a little bit more later, but like all my career development's offshore, and there are a lot of reasons for that. But this like underlines the importance of that. But the sad part is there are a lot of people. I'll talk about this a little bit downstream in our conversation today. But one of these projects, I found myself talking to experienced Chinese entertainment execs in the last 2 weeks. Of like 3 different people have had long conversations about it. They all love it, and in 2 cases, they would have the ability, like if it was set here, I mean, they would have the ability to put money in it or back it in some meaningful way, but that's not possible, and they can't put the money offshore. Right. So that I wasn't pitching to do that. It was just, what are you working on? Here's what I'm working on that you might be interested in. Oh, I am. That's really cool. So it's a nice positive, it's a nice affirmation that they like the creative, but it's sad that it's not even a choice. I mean, there are a lot of people here who would love to be involved in other stuff,
I hear a lot the phrase, we have no budget for that. It doesn't mean the money doesn't exist. The companies, the individuals, they have money.
Totally.
But the authorization for the budget, a discretionary budget for concept creation of something, production budget, it's not approved. Right?
We can't spend that money. We can't spend money on that.
And that's more and more the case these days in China, overseas. And it sounds like a whine, but we're just entering another one of those periods similar to, we were talking offline about the global recession of 2008 and how the U.S. housing market sort of kickstarted that. People may disagree with that, but I think generally the collective wisdom is that certainly didn't help, right?
And I had some, not to digress too much, but because you're going somewhere, there was a currency crisis that precipitated that.
Yes.
Because I was involved in a big-ass project that ended up blowing up because the investor was the way he was invested with his other assets. He took some giant bath.
Yep.
And then that meant, I can't give you this. It was a big chunk of it. It was most of our equity.
Yeah.
It was about $12 million in a $26 million project. And all of a sudden he's like, I'm so sorry, but I just can't do it. I mean, we have a contract, but I don't have the money to give you anymore.
The same thing happened to us in 2008. We had a co-production, animation co-production feature film set up with China Film Group and a group of American investors. And the recession hit.
Yeah.
And suddenly the American investors, the money that they had in the bank, in their fund, was worth 1/3 of what it was a week before.
Yeah.
And so they said, sorry, we're out.
Yeah.
And the contract, everything's all there. But on the China side, they're like, look, if you can get some new Americans in, we'll still move forward on this, but not by ourselves. And we couldn't find anybody else to come in because everybody was in the same boat. It was like, shit, we have no money. Or if we do have money, we're holding on to it, right?
Exactly.
Everybody's hunkering down.
Everybody's got to eat. Yeah.
And this happened in 2000 with the .com.
Yep.
I shouldn't say this happened because that makes it sound like it's the exact same thing.
Sure,
it's not the exact same thing.
That's right.
And it affects many industries. But in terms of a discretionary industry like entertainment and content creation, we tend to be almost like the canary in the coal mine, I feel. Like we sense it earlier sometimes than other people do because we'll see that gun-shy quality come in very fast.
Yeah, and that's part of why, just for people who might, if you're listening to this, and it's like, you're probably, if you're listening to this show, you're somewhat interested in entertainment business because that's really what this show has become, is becoming, and as a brand. But it's also, it's like, this is what we do, so this is what we can talk about kind of meaningfully with some degree of knowledge. But also, there's the reality that, as you just said really well, Kevin, is this is sort of the canary in the coal mine. This is the precursor. Like, we feel these effects because, as people start to, cut back on discretionary spending as a consumer, I mean, that's already been happening where people are spending way more money to make the thing that you would maybe spend your discretionary income on personally. I mean, that's happening at the industry level before because those people are looking farther down the road, frankly, because it's bigger money and there's more at risk.
People are still paying for meat and for clothes and things like that.
People figure out how to pay their rent, even if they have to hit up their friend, to in lean times. But there's a lot going on, and this relates to, there's Brexit, the impending global crash that would, we're all super screwed if that happens.
And Brendan and I seem to be, I don't know, we don't want to be pessimistic, but we're both, I guess, realists that maybe lean towards the pessimistic.
I like to think I'm an optimistic realist. That's been my personal brand, but I think I may be re-examining that. Please continue. I may have to rebrand myself.
I think Brexit's going to be the trigger for the next global recession, and I'm not unique in this observation.
Yeah.
I think analogous to what the housing crash did vis-a-vis the world in 2008, I think, the UK's determined march over the cliff is, I think, going to end up dragging them down, certainly, and by proxy, dragging a bunch of other people, Europe, the rest of the world. At the very least, when everything's going haywire, people are again going to hunker down.
And there's all these supply chains that are connected. The U.S.-China thing is a giant, the biggest example of that. But Europe is is often on the receiving end of
Yes.
the necessity of that working.
So
There's not a lot of latitude to screw with that.
I hope I'm wrong. I really do, but I think things are going to be bad pretty soon and for a little while. And again, this goes way beyond the entertainment industry. So,
Sure,
oh, boo-hoo,
sure.
we're not going to have new TV shows or new films. It's going to affect people in terms of buying meat.
Yeah,
and things like that.
totally.
Literally in the UK, right? I mean, the lines at the border, getting stuff through customs.
Yeah.
And when I mentioned the border, just the border between the Irish backstop, even there,
Right,
it's just a total mess. Medicine hung up. I don't want to go off on a tangent, but things are not looking too good right now, as you mentioned at the beginning of the show. There's a lot of stuff going on, and not all of it's good, as you said initially.
Well, one of my favorite, we've talked about this guy offline. One of my, frankly, I come and go on his podcast, and I come and go on all of his work because we sync up some places, and in some places we don't. But Gordon White, who is a very interesting podcaster and author, he writes a lot about esoteric stuff, kind of magical stuff. But he has a newsletter called the Tarl Cable, and that stands for the All Red Line, and it's this parapolitics, geopolitics, crystal ball, and he has. I would do him an injustice to summarize him so poorly, but he has a background in London doing like data analytics stuff for Google at a high end. He has a lot of deep game knowledge and experience and inside baseball knowledge that he then externalizes such as he can. And he's looking at the big chess pieces, like the big chessboard, and, talks about why Trump is, the symptom of a much bigger thing happening. What's really going on. And, and yes, this convergent and conspiracy theory, if you're kind of simple-minded or just want to go there, feel free, because it can be fun. But that's not where I'm coming from with this. I mean, so I mentioned him. He doesn't need me to advertise. He's got a pretty big audience, but I could use some of his audience, frankly. But and I have a tiny little sliver so high to people who follow Gordon Arun Soup. But what I'm getting at is that he has this phrase that I believe he coined called Fortress America, and how Trump is this useful idiot, by the powers that be, to enact Fortress America and the tax reform in the U.S. that has screwed so thoroughly, the poor and the lower middle classes, and has really squeezed the middle and upper middle classes, and it's really just benefiting this top little heavenly angel cake slice of glory at the top for the corporations and the ultra rich. That really this is about onshoring the offshore money, making the U.S. the preferred tax haven of the visible and invisible oligarchs of the world, and those who they benefit and serve and their operations. And that's actually the point. So all of this stuff, I mean, hating on brown people at the border and all these horrible effects, all this other stuff.
There is a strategy.
All this other, there's absolutely a strategy. Oh, we're not ignoring the environment. No, we're going to have, we're going to have our encapsulated, filtered, when there's only the handful of people. I mean, this gets into like, I mean, you can easily go off, speaking of marching off a cliff, I could go right off a fun cliff of conspiracy theory and global population reduction and control. And all this is, there's some real issues with this.
There are, and we'll save it for a different show. But because some of my projects are sci-fi related, I've been brushing up on my sci-fi short fiction and going back to the classics, people like Ursula Le Guin.
Your
and
dystopian tropes.
And when you look at things like AI, and actually I just recently watched a video, Sam Harris in 2016 in TED talking about the perils of AI.
Yeah.
And also the perils of climate change, the inevitability of climate change.
Right.
That the one common bond between AI, the perils of AI, the inevitability of climate change, is that when all is said and done, to your point that you just made, you will have the top 1% in their hermetically sealed bubble cities, whatever, who are benefiting in some way from this, or at least shielded from the effects, and the other 99% of the world who are royally screwed, climate-wise, intelligence-wise, opportunity-wise, etc.
What was that sci-fi movie where Matt Damon was the guy on the crappy Earth, and then there was the gorgeous Earth, and it had like Kate Blanchett or somebody was like the ruler in the encapsulated.
God, it's on the tip of my brain.
There was like a terraformed planet that was enclosed and perfect and beautiful. And
actually, that was an offshore. That was sort of like a satellite tube thing to simulate artificial gravity. Let's see if we can get it. I took my brain. It's not Gattaca. That Gattaca was
that was a while
Ethan
ago.
Hawke.
Ethan Hawke, Uma Thurman.
It was we go to B.
We can IMDb
Bologna.
this.
Okay, well IMDb it. Anyway.
Barcelona. Well, all right. So we'll figure out the weird Matt Damon movie. We'll put that. So Kevin's going to do that while I riff for a minute. So we're going to put links in the show notes.
Oh God, I got to turn my VPN on.
Oh my God! Hey, you're what? Your very personal network.
It's perfectly legal.
It's perfectly legal. Not in China. While Kevin is searching, and it's not The Martian, which is cool.
Let's see if I can find it.
That's another Matt Damon offer.
Keep going.
So we'll put links to this. We'll get this out here in a moment.
Yeah.
But I will put links to the Gordon White, the All Red Line stuff, because he really
I'll blurt it out
does.
Tourette's-like just in the middle of
cool. You do that. So it really is an interesting. It's food for thought. Even if you read and think that it's all a bunch of horsepucky, it's horsepucky that you'll find interesting and thought-provoking.
Yes.
It's something to stimulate your own neurons firing and forming your own opinion. But it is helpful, and this gets back to one of the most influential people on me was kind of the writer and sort of pop psychologist, psychedelic warrior Robert Anton Wilson, who had a lot of great concepts he introduced into the common vernacular and pop culture, especially in the 60s, 70s, and 80s for the weird kids like me growing up in those times. And he really promoted this idea. He would get these ideas from like general semantics and quantum physics, and he would try to take the lessons and put them into a cultural vernacular that had resonance beyond like the actual scientific and probably accurate meanings. But he really promoted this idea of model agnosticism. So there was Marshall McLuhan and the map is not the territory, and this idea of not confusing the representation of a thing with the thing itself.
Yes.
And this was written about by many people. And Kevin's looking really hard at IMDb. He's trying to find the film. I'll be able to do it. You got pull up Matt Damon, and I'll find it in a second.
All right.
But so this idea. So what I'm saying is like Gordon White is like the evolution. He's like an evolution of the Robert Anton Wilson kind of guy who's putting out the big, crazy, often to most people crazy, hairy ideas. But it's a lot of food for thought. So even if you subscribe wholeheartedly, then you will absolutely love it. But it's really useful to deconstruct the official reality.
Well, and also, there's an inherent need people have to try to discount the worst possible. Sorry, I'm really struggling. For those, I wasn't going to mention this, but I'm so doped up on Benadryl right now. Brendan and I were supposed to do this podcast a few days ago, and I had to beg off because my allergies were just killing me. So I'm duly medicated, but it also means I'm pretty useless when it comes to internet searches, especially here in China. And Brendan's scrolling. It's amazing that I can't remember this. I bet it begins with a B, a G. It's not.
I'm going backwards. I'm like, okay, Talented Mr. Ripley. I'm going the wrong
Talented
direction.
Mr. Ripley. I saw Invictus.
What kind of
That's
order
not
is
it.
this in?
I don't know. It's like in a weird order, but it's like almost like they don't want this film to.
Okay. It's not Contagion.
No.
It's not We Bought a Zoo.
That was actually a pretty good film, by the way.
That was pretty fun.
Yes.
Okay, it's not Deadpool 2.
It's like we moved to China.
Jay and Silent Bob reboot, which is
No, it wasn't that one.
No, of course not. It's not.
Well, really name-checking a lot of films
Elysium.
here. Elysium.
2013. Oh my gosh, that's a while back. Elysium.
So it doesn't begin with a B.
It doesn't begin with a B.
No.
But Elysium, that's a great. So there are a lot of people rooting for Elysium. There's actually people that are just like that. That's pretty good. We can improve on that.
That probably wasn't worth the payoff at all.
Sorry, but yeah, and again, this is pretty much an unfiltered. Barring some jackhammer being painful to our ears, this is a pretty unedited riff that we like to do. But this leads us to
you actually, because we're talking about Brexit, and you have your own sort of play on.
See, Brendan Brexit.
Yeah.
My Brendan's exit.
Tell us more.
Well, thank you. I've been teasing one, been sort of promising one, been expecting one. Frankly, I will do a quick. Keeping the actual cards close to the vest as is professionally appropriate regarding the Paris film, my favorite season that we're doing. What I can say is, again, film finance is always exciting. Even if you have no China relations, it's always this exciting adventure.
Yep.
And the good/great news is this, frankly, our financing is committed by people who 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 have, orders of magnitude more money than they would put in. Our budget is like a rounding error.
Yeah.
Ours is for an average the amount of money, even an expensive movie.
They can sneeze your budget.
It's basically like a cup of coffee to an average person, like how much, like relative to the amount of money that's coming. So the commitments there, et cetera, but there are lots of complicated confidential reasons why it's tricky to move the money around. It's all legal, legit, but there's, trying to avoid like losing tons of it in taxes and transaction fees and this and that. So while we wait for other people, while I wait for other people to fund our project, my personal Brexit had been to like go to Paris, pre-produce, and then produce this movie. So
you're supposed to be out of here.
I'm supposed to be like gone a month ago, actually.
Yeah.
And so if you are listening to these back to back somehow, then you've heard basically saying goodbye, and then, hey, I'm still here. We're talking. Why?
Yeah.
But I don't think that people are probably tracking me that closely or care that much. Although it's nice if you do. Thank you. I can feel the love. But more to the point is that, as things kind of drift around, and expecting it to work like it's supposed to work is always a little bit of a fool's errand and wishful thinking. But I mean, you do, there's certain things you need to be able to take for granted. And at a certain point, it's like, well, things committed. And I can really see it. And I've got like screenshots of banking. I think it's really right there.
Yeah.
I see it. It's sitting right there.
Almost taste it.
I can almost taste it. I can almost buy food with that money, which is the point, for me personally.
Exactly.
And
you do need to actually make a living.
And then to hire a bunch of people to do the job and make a movie too. Of course, that's the other point.
What was the quote you had about being a producer?
One of my mentors, great Barry Berg, he has this great quote where he said, "It's a lot easier to get rich as a producer than it is to earn a living." And I've been proving that correct for going on 20 years now.
And it's not easy to get rich.
It's not easy to get rich is the corollary to that. It's not easy to get rich. This is just about earning a living too. But so personal Brexit is still happening, but it's happening in interesting ways. So this week's very exciting because I'm renewing my lease. Mm-hmm. It's actually, the paperwork is over there by the door. The Quiety guy will be here after. We wrap up at about 2 p.m. our time on this. You got about another 28 minutes
and then
or so
you
of
sign
us.
your soul away.
I've got the contract, 2 copies signed. They're ready to go to the landlord, and then I get one back, and then I've got to magically give her the money by the end of the week. So that's exciting. But so I'm renewing my lease. And meanwhile, there is construction next door. We're recording during the lunch break, the mandated put the jackhammers down break, which is good. And these guys are much better than the knuckleheads who did the one across there was one upstairs of my previous neighbor, and it was 7 months of hell. I was gone for 4 months of it. I was gone, prepping this, Paris and shooting the short film and all this stuff. But
we did an episode during one. I think we were referencing it as a tree frog.
We did. There were still some little blurts and farts of noise. But these guys are actually really pro. I'm really impressed. They are getting to it. They start at the stroke of 9. They stop at noon. They start at 2. They stop at 6. And there's no weekends. They are totally by the book.
Awesome.
So I'm sure that's exciting for people. But so for me, I'm expanding my other engagements because, A, you have to do stuff. B, I need to somehow scratch up some business and, keep myself fed. So I have a plan A and a plan B. And so there's a couple interesting things I'll mention that people might be interested in. So plan A is I'm here about 5 more weeks to accommodate some live events, which I'll talk about in a minute. That's actually the part I want to get in detail. Cool. So then it's like going back to the U.S. So a little quick minute or two in L.A., to probably make myself to relax my brain in ways that you can only do in LA. Then some family time with my mom and her husband in Birmingham. Was that too specific?
We all got it.
And then I'm going to Las Vegas. Cool. I am very happy to join this event. There is an organization called Horasis. There was a guest we had on How China Works, Dr. Frank Jürgen Richter. He's former director of the World Economic Forum at Davos, speaking of the 0.1% of the world. But he has his own company now called Horasis, an organization that, as he says, they're like a kinder, gentler Davos. He's still based in he's
sorry, that sounded snarky.
Not at all. I see what you did there. No, Dr. Frank, he's a great guy.
That's not saying much, but
so he has. So they run 4 meetings a year. They have a China meeting, an India meeting, a Greater Asia meeting, and then a global meeting. And then the country regional meetings are never in the country region that's discussed, because they want the people. Like if you did the China meeting in China, then all the ballers, you'd be in Beijing, probably, maybe Shenzhen or Shanghai, but like all the ballers would show up for their 2 hours and they disappear.
Right.
You put it in Las Vegas, they got to commit. Because they don't want to not be there.
But then they're all pulling slots, right?
Well, that's up to them, and
that's not a euphemism.
That's up to them, and I'm not even going to touch that.
Maybe it is a euphemism.
It's possible that respectable people will listen to this, Kevin.
Literally or figuratively.
Work with me. It's possible respectable people will listen to this.
Just trying to spice it up.
I appreciate that. Well, I might have to de-spice this in the edit. No,
I'm
going to leave it spicy. So the point is that a much more serious version of me actually will show up to I've been asked. I'm moderating a panel on the future of the Belt and Road Initiative.
This is why I don't get asked to moderate panels, by the way.
Totally couldn't do. You talk about entertainment, animation, and things that you can be your charming self. Yeah. Well, so I have to, I have to be the more grown up version of myself. I get to be the more grown up version of myself and moderate this panel,
that's awesome.
which is I'm pretty excited and pretty honored, very seriously. So if some of the people I'm going to be moderating discover me through this, I apologize. You'll a different Brendan will show up. The part of me that is actually a nerd about the serious things of life will show up, and we'll have fun.
Yeah.
The bottom line is it will be fun, but I am doing homework. Because all these people are, managing director of this giant global VC fund and CEOs of that corporation. It's like major people.
Yep.
Like 300 world leaders, and Gordon White also has a term. I'm not applying this to these people. I should put more airtime between this comment and what I just said, so as not to cast aspersions or something like that. But Gordon refers to like the Senate and the Congress as the fulfillment layer of the military-industrial complex. The ones who bring the cash and prizes. So the mission. Again, I'm mixing streams very badly, but the mission of Horasis is very profound, and it's about understanding the economic realities of the world, endeavoring to help bring about the best case scenarios, and positive global change. Climate change is a real issue. The impacts of the trade wars and things like that. And so these are like some of the best and brightest thinkers who are demonstrably coming from a place trying to change things for the better and dealing with realities, but trying to bring real changes. And so this is really fulfilling for me because, I like to have fun and screw around, and I also have the serious part. And so this is a way to really do that. So, my homework is extensive to be able to learn everybody's expertise, and their company's expertise and background, and to become more knowledgeable. So I have my own personal, I have my film business weirdo experience with all of this. Yeah. And I live in China, and I know a lot of people experience, but then this is like the global important version of this.
They couldn't have picked a better person. I'm not just saying this to polish your knob, but I really am impressed with the fact.
I'm sure they would appreciate the reference.
But the homework you've done for your podcast, as you mentioned, we tend to focus on entertainment, content creation, those topics, because that's what we do.
This is our chance to riff, because normally there's a lot of research involved.
You've got people from all different walks of life, all different occupations who you've spoken to, who you've managed to have divulged things maybe they've never talked about so much or felt comfortable enough with you to really get into on a different level. So I really think that they made a great pick getting you to moderate that. And I'm sure anybody who's going, makes me want to go now.
Come on. I think there's tickets available.
Definitely be something different than what people might expect in terms of, what it gets into. And I mean that in a good way. I
appreciate that.
The territory that people feel comfortable enough to, delve in.
Well, and thank you for that. And strategically, again, my goal is to become as much of an expert on all the people. Of course, the issues I'm already somewhat knowledgeable and becoming more knowledgeable, but like the specific people I'll be talking to, their specific company organization. And then what are the three, and then we'll have a group chat to what are the three best questions that I should ask you specifically? And that's for everybody. And then I know that because I can ask questions and connect dots. That's what
I'll give you one right now.
And I can play traffic cop.
The question I would ask if I had something like that in front of me, I would say, what is the biggest issue right now we're facing that nobody's worrying enough about?
That's a great question. And actually, to Dr. Frank's credit, that is sort of that's kind of always like the meta context for his engagement is like, what are people, and I asked him this when I had him. I don't know if you heard that particular How China Works where we had him on, but we got really into it, and I asked him basically, obviously you can't divulge confidences, but he was here for the big powwow a couple of months ago, whatever, like the last big summit. I'm blanking right now. It was the NPC, it was the National Party Congress.
Okay.
And he was here, to attend that and to talk to the president. I mean, like, he talks to the world leaders. Like, and he's like, yeah, it's 5 minutes, but it's like his personal 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And
as opposed to
and he does
no
this.
access.
He does this. Yeah, I mean, this is like world leaders. He's consulting on economics, monetary policy, things like that. And people don't always take his advice, but people want to know his opinion, right? And what he thinks. And so
seems like the state of the world being what it is, people generally don't seem to be taking his advice.
Well, some are, fortunately, and then more are demonstrably doing their own thing. But I ask almost to verbatim. It's like, you talk to all these people, and of course their confidences you of course keep, and that's why these people talk to you and will engage. But can you generically summarize what are people saying? What's the gist of what people are saying privately that they're not saying publicly? Yeah. And what are they most terrified of? And he basically, again, Frank, if you're listening, please forgive me for summarizing so kind of colloquially, but it was basically, people are scared. I mean, people are freaked out by what's happening. I mean, people are actually freaked out. And he's talking like, world leaders freaked out about what's happening. It's like, well, great to know. Great to know, and I'll just kind of leave it there. And that episode is, if this is interested, if it's bored the hell out of you, you've already turned this off. But if you're interested in all this, you can go to How China Works and search Dr. Frank Jürgen Richter. It's one of the episodes. We have a lot of episodes I'm really proud of with that show, and that's one of them. But so for me, my plan A is, L.A., mom and her husband, and then Vegas, and then hopefully go back to L.A. and finish casting for our movie and go to Paris, buddy. Woo, high five. High five. That's plan A. Plan B is everything up through Vegas, and then back here to scratch out a living somehow, to do so. So plan B is that.
And related to that, the friend of mine who I mentioned, who was referring to China's film finance winter, said that the silver lining for him as a concept artist is that he's using that time, including the downtime and the stalled, plate time, to work on some things, content, ideas of things, etc., that are kind of like his creative money in the bank, so that when things do pick up again, he's not just sitting there with his pockets empty. He's got something to show for his time that can hopefully leverage on people's renewed enthusiasm for investing. And I know that you yourself have been putting some time and energy into some things that maybe you can't talk about in detail, but can at least allude to a bit.
Well, I'm happy to. There's actually the thing that I thanks for serving me up like that. That's very nice. It's like we have an outline that you're referencing. Hey, a little behind the curtain for you guys. I do. So there are the projects that I'm involved in as a producer, and so a few other things that are kind of circling around. But so like with the Horasis event, there's some other things where I could speak and moderate. In China, let me get back to you asked me this question. Let me interject. We have another How China Works Live. This drops on Friday. The Tuesday after, so September 17th, we're doing our next How China Works Live at the U.S. China Comedy Center with Jesse Appel, who's like one of the leading Western comedy guys here in China, who's extremely smart guy, on top of being funny. Most hilarious people are actually really smart as well, of course. Excited. That'll be a lot of fun and very funny. We have some goofy stuff planned as well. You're going to see me in like try a little improv, a little bilingual improv with Jesse.
So it'll make a nice spectrum between that and then we could be doing in Vegas with the
like wearing my suit and looking like a professional with a hair in a bun, but that's what happens with me. So there's that, and then there's an event that I actually can't be too specific about, but it's another live comedy podcast event that I'm working to set up with somebody prominent in the comedy world here, which I'll tell you offline. That would look to be early October before I go. And then I also I will say that I'll just say I ran into my friend Leslie. Hi, Leslie, who helps to run the events at the U.S. Embassy at the Beijing American Center at the U.S. Embassy, where I did a thing like last year with my former partners in a podcast network attempt. But I've been asked to curate some events, to host some events there. So I'm looking to put together, and this may be when I return, but I'm in the early planning stages, as in we talked about it yesterday, and I'm thinking about it overnight, but I'm very excited to put together some events with some fellow Megwarin Americans such as you and probably Jonathan and a few other people, interesting thinkers, to discuss some things in the state of things, and to have an event like that at the Beijing American Center. So that's really fun. But in terms of money in the bank, because those are all, frankly, like fun pro bono things.
You're not getting rich off those
Not getting rich off that, not getting anything. I mean, it's costing me the taxi fare kind of thing, costing me the Didi. But creatively, I was asked a lot this weekend as I talked to a lot of people, and also previous weekend in Shanghai with this 48-hour film school. People getting to know you. What do you do? Oh, writer, director, producer, mostly a producer. Credits, mostly a producer. And before that, technical credits for a long time. But really, the goal for me is getting back to writing and directing, and still producing, always producing, and always producing for other people too. But writing and directing and my own stuff. And so this thing that started as a TV series idea, I worked on it for several years. I reworked it as an independent feature because I can make a feature. And especially if I'm the writer and director, then I can produce it and I can do it for a certain budget. I feel like I could get it made like that. But it's really a TV show. And I've had great mentors. Well, now's a good time
in many respects with the streaming boom. It doesn't mean it's easy, but
no. But it's because normally, like first-time creator, showrunner, it would have been like basically impossible at a network. And now, and I'm getting encouragement, and I'll tell you the offline version of this before you take off today. But what I can say here for you that are listening with this is that it was just very nice to your question about having things in the bank. I'm in the midst yet again, although I don't have the time at this week really, but I'm in the midst of this rewrite. Because I've had new ideas. Cool. So I have this thing that's basically a TV project, and it's aimed at like Netflix or Amazon or HBO.
That's awesome.
And I had some real encouragement from people who know these things and sell shows to these outlets that, we'd love to take this to Netflix for you.
That's great.
Yeah. I'll tell you offline who I'm talking about. But I'm like, and again, to dear listener, I mean, I am not at all riding my own hype. It's like, it's simply, that's great encouragement. And this particular show, I'm not going to even remotely try to pitch it, but it's set in the U.S. It's actually set in L.A. and it's in this context of a very Western vernacular. But the center, it's an ensemble show, but there's a guy and a girl at the middle of it, and the guy in the middle is he's expanding his business into China. And then the girl, we come to realize about halfway through the first episode that I've made her as generically white bread American as possible, blonde hair, blue eyed, etc. Come to find out, she has all this China knowledge and she grew up in Hong Kong and went to college in Beijing for undergrad, and she's in grad school in the U.S. Cool. And so magically so they're actually working together and connected on a personal level, which is part of the excitement because he's 38 and she's like 25.
That's cool.
Yeah, there you go. It ain't bragging if you can do it. So, but she has her reasons. He's a pretty compelling guy, and she's a really interesting girl. But so she has all this deep China knowledge. So in the pilot, there's other China themes, and like the girl's roommate is a Chinese girl, and she's got like a free rent in exchange for like language exchange, to help this girl with her English and whatnot. And so you realize our blonde-haired, blue-eyed Amy is like totally fluent in Mandarin, reads, writes, totally fluent.
So really flipping the script in that
really
respect.
Turn it up on its head, and because we know plenty of people like this,
yeah,
who all of a sudden you're with a friend that you maybe a new friend or a new business acquaintance you don't know that well here, who's a Westerner. And then you're in a context, and then you hear them bust out with their language, and they sound like a local.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you are like good.
And this is the world that pretty much everybody's going to be living in.
Exactly. And so I just found myself like not pitching at all. I mean, pitching in the sense
you were just talking about
it. Talking about it when people are like, what are you working on? It's like, well, these movies, these projects, doing some speaking stuff, would like to do more consulting stuff. I don't think the money's
Nobody
there for
wants
it.
to listen to a Laowai anymore.
Nobody wants to listen to us talk. Hopefully you're listening to our podcast and enjoying it for free, but you wouldn't pay us. If I ask you to buy me a cup of coffee for this, check out. That's okay. I don't think so. So I've had just a really, really positive reaction to this from 3 very different people, 2 of whom are like real serious industry pros, and one of them, I mean, all Chinese people, but real major industry professionals here. And another is like a very knowledgeable producer, creator, and just like real encouragement. And all 3 female, by the way. So even frankly, things that I was concerned about, like, it's not sexist, but is this
an appeal to?
Yeah. And so like actually all 3 are very successful Chinese women who've all been, and I've had other like personal friends and whatnot who've also responded to it.
That's cool.
But so that's really encouraging. And so what that tells me is I need to focus on that, but that is absolutely a U.S. It ends up becoming like the China
It's
angle.
not a China project.
It's not a China project at all.
But it's not as a topic, but it's not.
Hopefully, it doesn't get my visa canceled because of plot lines that happen later.
It'll probably be bootlegged here like crazy because it'd be
hopefully
successful
so
Netflix
because
project.
it's about reality.
Yes.
And so from the beginning, China seems kind of incidental. Oh, it's an interesting flavor. The blonde hair, blue eyed white girl is fluent in Chinese, and this guy's doing China business, and there's the angle that becomes a major thing. That's not the main point, but that's like the whole B story.
Yes.
Is about the current reality of China, U.S., etc. From the perspective of somebody who likes to think he knows something about what he's talking about.
Yeah.
And I know people who know more than me.
And I'm sure you've had discourse with people, film companies here, professionals in Chinese media who love these shows that they acknowledge cannot be shown here. Like, that's a great show. It's too bad we can never show it. We can't technically license it or show it, and everybody's watching it.
It pops up on some channel.
Surreptitiously. I think the really cool thing, kind of bringing this all around, is that in the midst of how we started talking about, the stalled plates and the uncertainty and waiting for funds to come through and what do you do? We were talking before we started recording about just how kind of crazy and stupid, I guess, we are as creatives. Like we're compelled to create content, right? To tell stories and to try to make something out of nothing. And other people out there, I'm sure can hear and feel what we're talking about.
Yeah.
There's no logical reason why we should do this or need to do this other than just in our hearts, like we have to, right? There's and it's really cool for me to hear you talk about how in the midst of, I know it's been tough for you, like, come on, can we just move on this thing?
Yeah.
To get back into something that clearly just watching you talk about it here, your face is lighting up.
About the thing.
The creator, right? The writer, director.
I want to make that more than anything.
Yeah.
I really want to make that.
And I think that's at the heart of what we do. And that's hopefully when we're talking about light from a star, hopefully not 4 years from now, but let's say 2-3 years from now, people are watching something that we did.
Yeah,
hopefully,
totally. Yeah,
they'll remember this conversation. This was that initial light, right, coming forward that eventually, hopefully, makes it out to distribution.
Well, I love it, and so again, film is always hard. In times of economic stress, it's always harder.
Yep.
So you always have to have a personal and a professional plan A, plan B.
Indeed.
If your name rhymes with BR, then you can call it your personal Brexit.
Yeah,
but
right now I have like a Kev sit.
Yeah, that works.
That works.
Kind of
works. Anyway,
that works. Well, Kevin, any last thoughts before we sign off and the jackhammering starts in 7 minutes?
I'm gonna stay fast on Kev sit.
I like it. All right, you heard it here first, everybody. Thanks for listening, and don't forget you can visit crazyinagoodway.com to find out more about this show. My other shows are all linked there. There's archives. HowChinaWorksPodcast.com has its very own website that I just mentioned. It's linked within Crazy in a Good Way too, so you can search and check out. I've had lots of really interesting stuff. So if you're more interested in China stuff, you can enjoy that till your ears fall off. That's a bad encouragement for people to go listen.
Enjoy it till
enjoy it until you hate it and it damages you. No, but there's tons of information there, and I've been lucky on Big Fish in the Middle Kingdom. I've got so many interviews. Kevin and I did this little 2-man routine many times, and we have his initial "Here's who I am" and "Here's how I got here" interview there. And there are many other people. It was all downhill from there. Many other people, and then on this show, If I Knew You Better, I'm continuing to have some great folks, and I've got more exciting authors, speakers, producers, directors, writers coming up. So thanks.
A lot to look forward to.
Thanks. See y'all soon.
Cheers, everybody.
Bye.